Hello, and welcome back to the channel, where today we're going to be looking at a pretty cool game that I watched today. A game between Australia's highest rated Grandmaster, that's Grandmaster Anton Smirnov. He was playing in a simul event. That is where typically a master, in this case Anton, was playing simultaneously against 24 different people on 24 different boards, had 24 games going simultaneously. And he walks around and makes his move at one board, then the next, then the next, then the next, 24 boards, and then just does the loop. Once he gets back to the board, it's expected that his opponent will then make their move. He makes his move and off they go. And now I happened to be in the area, so I popped in and watched the simul event, and this particular game was played on board 13, where Anton, the Grandmaster, had the white pieces, and he was playing against a very good club level player by the name of Justin Dingley, who has a rating of about 1654, and that's his formal rating in the standard category of chess. Now, this game was quite notable in the fact that Justin managed to do very well. Anyone with a rating of less than 2000, in fact, anyone at all, would be typically very happy to get a draw against a Grandmaster. Now, as we're going to see, Justin Dingley got pretty close to getting a draw here. Justin did a really good job, but at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see how Grandmaster Smirnov ground down Justin Dingley. So without further ado, let's get into this game in which Smirnov opened with e4 and Justin Dingley responded with c6, the Caro Khan. We have d4, d5, knight c3, captures on e4 twice, knight f6, captures on f6 twice. Already we've got one set of minor pieces traded. This knight for this knight, they've disappeared off the board, which somewhat reduces the attacking potential and already, in some ways, brings things a little bit closer to a draw. Play continues with c3, bishop d6, bishop d3, castles, knight e2, preventing the rook from coming to e8 with check. At least now when it comes to e8, which is what happens, it's not with check, which allows Anton to continue by castling on his own. Here we have knight d7, which does temporarily block the bishop, but it's still a good developing move, considering the knight can't come here. We now have rook e1. The knight then steps out of the way, going to f8. The bishop can now breathe again. And here we have knight g3 and knight g6. So pretty standard moves so far, and a very equal position. Bishop d2, bishop d7. We have a trade of rooks. There's an offer for a trade of queens, which isn't accepted. Dingley instead says, if you want to trade queens, you take here so I can improve my bishop on the recapture. Of course, Smirnov doesn't indulge in that. He actually improves his own bishop with a tempo on this queen, sort of pushing Dingley into a queen trade, which he does. And then after rook e8, there's rook e1. And again, this already has the feel of a very equal position. King f8, we have h3 thrown in, just preventing this bishop from using this square, which it might otherwise have wanted to do. And now after bishop e6, the bishop drops back. We have a capture. And then after rook e7, king f1, king e8, knight c1, offering a rook trade. And after king d7, forcing that trade of rooks. And then knight d3. Again, it's been a very kind of straightforward game, a very kind of a simple game so far. And one in which there have been trades of pieces, been relatively, equal feeling, hasn't been very complicated, hasn't been very sharp or tactical. And we're reaching a position already where both sides have only got two minor pieces left. So I would say going very well from the perspective of Justin Dingley. Well, He continues on with g6, king e2, king coming towards the center as normal, getting ready for this endgame. After knight f5, Smirnov plays g4, kicking that knight back away, which chooses g7 to retreat to. And now we have f3, just supporting his position. And after g5, we have f4. This pawn is adequately supported. It's attacked twice, but it is defended twice as well. So captures here would really benefit Anton Smirnov because his pieces would be able to improve their position ultimately by landing up here. So we don't see those trades. Instead, we just see Dingley reinforcing this pawn a little bit. And now Smirnov just pushes right past and tries to clamp down, takes this square away from the knight, and slowly trying to choke his opponent. Try to cancel out any of the options that his opponent has. And nevertheless, it still seems very equal, so still going very well for Dingley, who now plays h5, and Smirnov says not to worry, this pawn's already defended. I'm simply going to play c4, put another pawn into the center, advance, get a bit of more space over here. And after the trade of pawns, Dingley plays his knight back here, looking for greener pastures per se. And then we have Smirnov doing the same, looking for a better spot for his knight, because at the moment it really doesn't have anywhere it can go. I mean, maybe here, but then it's going to get traded. We're going to be even closer to a draw perhaps. So looking maybe to play on the light squares, putting pressure on the bishop. And the bishop moves itself a little bit. The knight does in fact jump into the central light square. We have b6, king d3, bishop moves back a bit, bishop b4, knight c7. You can see this maneuvering going on. Again, doesn't seem very tactical. And again, to me, the average spectator, it looks really quite even. In actual fact, when you put on the engine strongly prefers white here. The evaluation is strongly in white's favor. It might be +3 or 4, but it's certainly not easy to see why that is. I mean, both sides have an equal amount of pawns. Yes, some of them are both doubled pawns. Both sides have, equal material, a knight each and a bishop each. Yes, white has a bit of a space advantage, and the king is more, greatly advanced, and the pieces themselves are further up the board than Dingley's pieces, but you sort of would have thought it's closer to a draw than to +3 or +4. Anyway, Smirnov continues. Bishop d6, and then there's a6, and Smirnov captures the knight, clearly sensing that his knight here must be better than Dingley's bishop. I mean, again, to me, the average observer, it seems that, hey, this is a knight versus a bishop. I guess you could say it's a good knight versus a bad bishop, kind of an endgame, but nevertheless, a knight versus a bishop and equal amounts of pawns, it seemed pretty even to me. Smirnov continues with b4, again grabbing some more space. Dingley improves his bishop with a tempo on this pawn, which Smirnov now defends with his king. And we have the king starting to shuffle. Dingley doesn't want to create any weaknesses in his position, so you're going to see this king stepping back and forth here for a while, asking Smirnov how he intends to break through this position. Well, Smirnov says, okay, I'll improve my knight, watch this. As the king shuffles, the knight jumps back and lands eventually on e3. The idea is he's going to now push this pawn forward, and it will be supported by this pawn and this knight. So we're going to see it. King continues to shuffle. We have d5. Now, if there is a capture, then the knight can jump in, and it's a beautiful check that also hits the bishop and also hits this pawn. So capture really isn't going to work here. Dingley therefore does not capture, he pushes beyond the pawn, putting pressure on this pawn, attacking it twice, once with the pawn and once with the bishop. Smirnov takes. And after the recapture with the bishop, again, I mean, now I'm really thinking, hey, this is a draw. This guy's going to hold on. He's actually going to hold Anton Smirnov, a grandmaster. He's going to hold him to a draw. What an exciting moment for Justin Dingley. Well, Smirnov defends the knight, which was attacked. And Dingley improves the position of his king. And now we see the king of Smirnov improve itself further, still keeping an eye on his knight, of course, that's important. Now a5 is played, b3, both pawns just improving themselves a little bit. And now it's sort of at an impasse where it's difficult for Dingley to improve any other pieces. If this pawn can't move forward, it just gets captured. Same with this one. These pawns are all, completely blocked. And what's the king going to do? Move backwards? No. So it's kind of at a point now where it really only makes sense to move the bishop, to do something with the bishop. So, okay, he puts it to bishop b4. And Smirnov takes the chance to play knight c2, attacking that bishop, saying, if I get rid of the bishop and ruin your pawns, I can work with that potentially. Again, the margins seem slim here. So Dingley's done very well, I would say, here, 48 moves in. It's always good when you can last 48 moves against a grandmaster. Now, Dingley plays bishop c3, protecting the bishop by moving it off the square. And here Smirnov plays knight d4, improving his knight, and there's a threat in the air. The threat is to play knight b5, check, forking the king and the bishop. So that's the threat that has to be dealt with. Dingley deals with that threat by moving the king to c5. Seems like a good move. Smirnov continues on with knight c6. Interestingly, both of the last two moves have been blunders. What do I mean by that? Well, this move, king c5, is a blunder because, in actual fact, Smirnov here could have played d6, just pushing the pawn. And the reason is it's a very urgent, priority now for Dingley to stop this pawn, because if he doesn't stop it, it's going to very quickly reach its promotion square and turn into a queen. So he has to stop the pawn, but if he takes it straight away, that same fork appears on the board with a check, and then taking the bishop. So, in fact, king c5 was a blunder because it allowed d6. And if you don't take the pawn, what else do you do here? Let's say you take the knight. Well, now c7 is played and there's no way to prevent it from becoming a queen. You might chase it, but it becomes a queen. And now white has an overwhelming material advantage and will win with a queen versus a bishop. So, because of that, this king c5 move was a blunder, and the reason it's a blunder is because of d6, which would have been the best reply. Now, Grandmaster Smirnov didn't play this. In fact, he played, as we've said, knight c6. Now, because he missed the chance to play this move, knight c6 is considered a blunder. He should have played this move instead, but nevertheless, knight c6 is still a very nice move, because he's now threatening to come here and attack this pawn, which is immobile. It can't move, and it's on a light square, so it can't be defended by this bishop, which is a dark squared bishop. It's never going to be able to defend this pawn. Meanwhile, if the king is far away, then after this move, you can pretty much guarantee this pawn's going to drop. And that might be, something to hang your hat on if you're Anton Smirnov. So what do we see? We see b5, and now Smirnov takes the pawn, and in fact plays this move, knight d8. Now, this was really the moment where I thought we were going to see Justin Dingley possibly even play for a win. But I certainly thought it would be at least in a drawn position here, because I thought what he was going to do here, was play this move, king b4, attacking Smirnov's pawn, which itself can't be defended. So now after, say, knight takes f7, king takes b3, I thought here Dingley's got this beautiful a5 pawn which has a clear run towards its promotion square. Smirnov, it's true, has his pawn, and those two pawns are going to erase. So Smirnov would push, d6, a4, d7. Dingley would have bishop a5, preventing the pawn from becoming a queen. If the pawn wanted to become a queen here, you would see the queen get snatched off the board, and after the knight captures the bishop, Dingley would have the ability to then push his own pawn, which is unstoppable now, and will become a queen. And he would be the winner of the game. So that's what I thought he had in mind I really thought, here when he played this b5 move, I thought the idea was after take and knight d8, I thought the move was going to be king b4, with that plan in mind of having a bit of a pawn race. And of course, if the queen isn't made straight away, I mean, what else do? You could play, say, knight d6 to get your knight closer towards this pawn straight away and just keep this pawn here as a menace. But still, you have a bit of a pawn race on your hands. And it's really, seems like it's dangerous here. I think the computer says that it's all zeros. It's a dead draw here, technically, but certainly this seems much more scary from, if I'm Anton Smirnov, I'd be a little bit more worried about this variation. And if I was Justin Dingley, I'd be a little bit more, convinced that this was the way for me to play. But instead of, playing this king b4 idea, which I think would have been best, Dingley played, I think, a big blunder. He played bishop e5, just allowing Smirnov to take the pawn, not just to take it, but to take it with tempo, because now he's also threatening to take the bishop, and after he recaptures, to also take the pawn, and thereby have two passed pawns that are ready to promote. Now he's lost a pawn, and he just has to move the bishop back, which is what he does. So I think that was a big blunder. This move right here, where he's put the bishop here. And Smirnov, of course, takes the pawn. Dingley now retreats the bishop, and Smirnov plays the knight back with check. Again, I would have kind of thought that the king would move forward to at least put pressure on this pawn. But instead, Dingley plays his final move against Anton Smirnov. He plays king b6, which is another big blunder, even a worse blunder than before, because now Smirnov took about half a second or less to play knight c6 check, and also hitting the bishop, at which point Justin Dingley, after a very, very respectful and respectable battle, holding a grandmaster to what looked like a pretty even position, even after 50 odd moves. That's a very, very, difficult thing to do, and a very respectable achievement, really. But unfortunately, under the pressure of the moment, made a elementary blunder, which we all do. And as a result of this knight fork landing on the board, he, of course, shook Anton Smirnov's hand in resignation. And that was that. So, a very nice game. And I guess, what I take away from this is, Anton Smirnov definitely played in a very safe way, and you can understand why. He's got 24 games playing at the same time. He doesn't have the ability to give his undivided attention to any single game, and therefore he's not going to play his most complex and most challenging style of chess. Instead, he's going to play a very safe and secure style of chess where he feels that he cannot lose, but that with patience, his opponents may start to make mistakes, which is what happened. This is all very even, and he's playing very safe chess, having very minimal advantages, not playing anything very speculative or spectacular, gathering space, playing very positionally, and ultimately, even when he had this position where he was, by the computer's evaluation, up, 3 or 4, +3 or +4, in human terms, it was still very even. And, a few moves after, I think around here, it pretty much was, even in computer terms, I think at this point, it's probably all zeros. So, after 45 moves to be in a drawn position, again, Dingley did very well, but again, focusing on what was Smirnov's strategy, his strategy was just simple, safe chess, which probably is why Dingley was able to remain in this drawn kind of a position, because Smirnov was playing in a simple way. He wasn't playing his most lethal, most precise, most kind of laser focused way as he would against other top grandmasters. He was playing in a super solid, basically undefeatable manner, and waiting for a mistake. And the mistake eventually came in the form of King c5. He didn't punish that mistake, which was interesting. You know, he's a human after all. It's not necessarily easy to see, especially when you've got 23 other games going on at the same time. But after knight c6, which was a very nice idea, b5 takes, knight d8. In the absence of king b4, and when you instead play something like knight e5, well, this is the mistake Smirnov was waiting for. Takes with tempo on the bishop, bishop moves, knight comes back, and already white's a lot better here because he was patient, and eventually Dingley cracked. And, you know, it was only the very next move where Dingley cracked even more, and ultimately this position is entirely hopeless, which is why he resigned. So very interesting, you know. Why can't we all play like this, huh? Why can't we all play like Grandmaster Anton Smirnov? Super solid, undefeatable, you know, patient, super disciplined chess, and just pouncing when there's an opportunity. Even if you miss a winning opportunity, you're still in at least a drawn position, and you know, an opportunity will come again, and that's ultimately what happened. So this Simul event was very, very illuminating. Great to see Australia's top grandmaster up close and personal, and to see, you know, the way that he really plays, the way that he did it. There were other games where I saw that he was also employing a similar strategy of patient, disciplined chess, and you know, it was fantastic. Now, if you happened to be at this event, let me know what your thoughts were in the comments below. If you happen to be playing any of these games, particularly if you are Justin Dingley, thank you for letting me take a photo of your play sheet, by the way, Justin. But you know, if you particularly were either Justin Dingley or Anton Smirnov or anyone else that was playing against Anton Smirnov, put a comment in the box below. And you know, especially if you did play another game and you have your game sheet, send it through and let's have a look at that game as well. That'd be really great to see. In the meantime, I hope you're all well. Hope you enjoyed this game, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.